Hey there, it's Laurence Tham here from LaurenceTham.com. So a couple of key things I would love for you to consider here is, number one, is that if you're doing any sort of virtual consults or telehealth or any type of just consultation online, there's a couple things you need to consider that you may not have thought about. I know that a lot of chiropractors right now are either not working or they have decreased hours. Another way, whether you are closed or still open and still have the opportunity to consult with some of your clients virtually, something to consider. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not endorsing, I want to be very clear, I'm not endorsing necessarily about you need to be on telehealth. I'm not suggesting that your strategy should be on virtual consults, but I will say one of the best ways to connect right now in this period of time is virtually through either a phone call or virtually like this on Zoom or some sort of FaceTime or so on and so forth. And why you want to leverage that is obviously to communicate and connect and care for your clients, and also obviously to help you reestablish business later on and making sure you're front in mind. But the challenge is what most people forget is that how you operate on virtually versus how you operate in person live is a very different, completely different picture. And this is where most people make the mistake. And I really want to kind of help you kind of tweak some of these things to help you transition this properly. Whether you use this or not, it's an important thing to remember, because if you decide to shoot videos, for example, it's the exact same theory. So this applies to you virtual consults and applies to you on video. So if you ever want to do videos, well, let me show you what you're thinking about. Okay, great. So let's go through a couple of the consideration of what you have to go through. The challenge, of course, that in real life, in real practice, what you're doing, of course, is that you have plenty of space, but more importantly, you actually have three specific elements that helps you really thrive. Let's think about all the senses, right? The major senses you as a chiropractor have is you actually have something, what we do very, very best in a live situation, like in a live situation in practice, you actually have something, what we call hands, right? As a chiropractor, we have hands, which means we have our ability to be manual. So which means our strongest things to connect and communicate and care and build trust and rapport. What is it? Well, it's going to be our ability to touch people. That's what we do as chiropractors. Even if you're instrumental, that's the same thing. So the ability here has a massive effect on the kinesthetic part of your patients, right? And with your clients. And that's how you connect. That's how we connect as chiropractors. We love that, and which is awesome. The other two aspects is really important, just as important, obviously, is our verbal communication. Right? That's going to be huge. Verbal communication is going to be massive. It's important, and that's why I spend a lot of time helping my clients to make sure that you're communicating properly using the right words, phrases and tonality and all sorts of stuff. The other thing, of course, is the visual aspect. And sometimes we don't think about that, but obviously we do in a way, because otherwise you would just show up in your pajamas every day. Now, of course, you don't do that. Of course, you show up dressed up somewhat in a professional manner. You put makeup on, you do your hair, so on and so forth. So we do care about the visual aspects. So the key element is that in live practice, we have verbal communication. We can connect with them visually, but also connect them kinesthetically. But the challenge, though, when you move from virtual, right, to online, just like this, you're down now, unfortunately, lose one major, it's not even a third, right? I would say probably 50% or more of the most skillful asset you actually have. So what does that look like? Well, this is going to look like this. So in that case, what you're going to end up doing is like this. You don't have a bottom. And so when you're in virtual consult or on video, just like this, the challenge you have is that you only can rely on your verbal skills, right? And your visual skills. So if you notice just in this video, what am I doing? It's like, well, I'm providing you some visual skills, right? I'm providing you with some visual context so you can actually see some models and not just a face. And so that's an increased contrast. So something to consider there. And so therefore, in a virtual environment, it's really important for us to kind of consider here is that you only have two things that you can rely on, and you lose the massive drop of the kinesthetic, which is a huge thing for chiropractors, and oftentimes we forget that. So how do we compensate for this? Well, you compensate by making sure you do these four things I'm going to just talk about that will help you navigate through this particular time, because if you don't do these things, you don't consider it, you're actually not building rapport. So because what you can't do is you can't be doing exactly the same things as you are in front of a live patient to when you are in a virtual consult. So when you're giving consults, what has to happen is that you actually have to do something very, very drastically different. And how you do that is this. So remember, this is the key element, right? You actually have a square, which means that you have to somehow convey all your emotions, right? All your emotions, ability to connect in a square box, just like this. That's it. This is the only space I have to be able to connect with you. And that's the only space you have to connect with your patients. Because when you're in live position, you're going to be back here, right? I know you can't necessarily hear me, but you have all of this space. But when you're in a virtual consult, you only have this space. Now, obviously, you can have Bluetooth headphones and move back a little bit. I understand that. But all you're still confined with this screen. And so therefore, you got to challenge yourself to be able to, how do I communicate and connect emotionally through this box? Because that's the limitation. Because now you have to somehow figure out that you have to figure out how to convey all your emotions, right, and influence in this 4 square box. And that's the challenge we actually have to go through. And so here's 4 specific tips that you need to consider, 4 specific ways that will help you, right? Help you navigate through this period of time. Because if you can figure this out, then you're going to be able to be doing these type of consults so much better. So let's kind of go through this. Number 1 is you have to learn how to express the expression, because remember, we only have 2 things right now, right? We only have, if you remember, I mentioned, you have the ability of your verbal skills and your visual skills, and that's it. Now, I'm going to make one assumption here. The assumption I'm making is that you're doing this live on video or through a consult. Now, if you're on a phone, guess what? You just lost kinesthetic, you just lost visual. All it is now is all verbal. So which means you have to now only convey every message and emotion through verbal communication, which can be very, very difficult. So what I'm suggesting is that let's go with the virtual one so people can actually see you. So when people can see you, now you have verbal and visual, but you lost kinesthetic. That's a huge component, as I mentioned. So therefore, what we need to do is double down on these 4 things, and one of them being expression. So what does that expression mean? Well, in this screen that I actually have here, I have to now create emotion to you watching that through this screen. So which means I have to, my facial expression, how I communicate that emotion has to be not necessarily exaggerated, but it's got to come forth. Expression also means my body movement, because back here, if I'm in live, I can have all this space, but when I'm in front of a camera, I only have this space right here, right? I can't do that. I can only do this. So which means that you got to be able to convey your emotion that you want to talk to your patients or your clients in this space, just in this particular four square. This is the same thing when you do videos. So first of all, expression is hugely important. So the second thing you want to consider here is that when you're providing information through the consultation, is that you need to figure out how to be very clear on your instructions. Well, why is that so important? Well, when you think about in life, in real life practice, you actually have the ability to guide people, right? You can kind of use your hands to move them. That's the kinesthetic part. But in a virtual consult, you don't have that capability. So which means that you got to be very, very careful on the exact words you use. So now all of a sudden you challenges you verbally to give specific instructions. And that's a huge component when it comes to video for people to understand you, especially when you're doing like things like stretches or get them to do certain activities or get them to move a certain way. Your instruction has to be very crystal clear. So that's the second thing you want to consider. The third element that you want to consider here is also very important, which is the tone and pace. Now, I know I speak very fast. I get it. I know I speak very fast, but what I can do is change the modulation of my tone and pace to make a point, right? So what I mean by that is that when you go into a certain serious mode of like when you're giving them some instructions or a recommendation, or you want them to really hone in on something, you want to slow it down. You want to kind of make a point. You want to kind of go deeper in your tone, not go high, because high is excitement, energetic, but when lower, it becomes more of a down tone to make sure that they hear you loud and clear. You don't have to shout it. You need to be more specific and slow it down. So those are the paces you can kind of work with, the tone and pace on the information you're trying to kind of convey in a phone call or a virtual video or virtual consult. So that's really important. The fourth thing here that's ultra important when it comes to virtual consults that you forget. It's also important in live, but now when you switch it, this is doubled down. You need to be so much more important, is the power of words. The power words. So what I call power words and phrases. And so one of the things I teach in a course called Conversion Mastery is that the power words that create influence, right? That create influence for people to take actions on certain things and create frameworks for you to help them understand what you recommend is what they need. And so therefore, those power words are going to be really critical to convey the emotions that you want. You might not think that's important, but trust me, I'm not talking scripts here. I'm talking about the ability to be able to communicate is the words you use and be able to move someone, to move them in action, but also move them. Before you can move them in action, you have to move them emotionally. And before you can move them emotionally, they have to learn to trust you. And see, this is the difference in the transition we have to make from a live environment, which is in your practice. We can convey all that through touch, through visual and through verbal, but in a virtual, you have this square box and that's all you got. And which means that you have to convey all of those emotions in this frame, and therefore these 4 things is going to help you become better and connect more with your patients. So I hope this makes sense. If there's any questions, please comment below. But if you're interested in learning how to be better and a better communicator, then make sure you go check out Conversion Mastery Program. That's something I've been designed for. It's a 12-week program. The best time for you to be able to do that. I actually created a relief offer that's amazingly special right now, so that allows you to learn all the stuff you need to do, learn all the phrases and stuff that you can have to help you be more an influential chiropractor, not just now, but also in the future. So hope that you enjoy that. Go to conversionmastery.com. And if you haven't joined our Chiro Think Tank group, please go search on Facebook, go to Chiro Think Tank by Laurence Tham. I'll see you there, and you can ask all the questions there. I try to jump in there and try to answer as many questions as possible. Guys, I hope this has been helpful to help you transition from a live personal interaction with your clients to a virtual interaction. But the same tips I do here is exactly on how you shoot better videos. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already done so, that subscribe button, you should press it. And because I want to share videos with you just like this one to help you grow your practice.